Welcome to this special episode of the ADHD Reframed Project. This episode is a special episode as part of Podcastathon. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I have a problem pronouncing some words, and that is one of them, unfortunately. The goal of Podcastathon is to raise money and support for a non-profit cause, and the cause I have chosen is Find the ADHD Girls. This week is also Neurodiversity Celebration Week, and I'm happy to say to you all, happy Neurodiversity Celebration Week. Now, I've tried to record just me speaking, and then adding in the interview that I did with founder Cynthia Hammer. But unfortunately, just recording me sitting here talking just felt really unnatural. So today I am joined by, today Hannah is here. So Hannah, I'm just going to get tongue-tied and continue tongue-tied, but I'm handing it over to you so you can maybe...
No worries. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Emma. And yes, happy Neurodiversity Celebration Week. So I'm Hannah. I am a lecturer at a private university, and I'm also co-chair of the Neurodiversity Network there. So I'm really, really honoured that Emma has asked me to interview, and that you feel comfortable sharing. So thank you so much. So I just wanted to start by asking why, I guess, you'd chosen the particular organisation, the FINDtheADHD Girls, as why it's important to you.
I think as a late diagnosed ADHD woman, and only being diagnosed in 2019 when I was age 43, I call us as the lost generation of women and girls that have gone undiagnosed. But I think back to how different my life could have been, possibly if I'd have had the diagnosis earlier. And I have had many conversations with you, Hannah, and with other women, and I wanted to try and kind of find some younger girls to hopefully enable them to see themselves as a positive way rather than a negative. A lot of my childhood was traumatic, and yes, some of that was because I had undiagnosed ADHD. I think within girls, the inattentive ADHD is primarily kind of where we sit, although we can still have the combined type. But I think through this podcast, I've had several people reach out and want to be guests, and Find the ADHD Girls is very closely linked to the ADHD Reframed Project, so it just seemed like the perfect non-profit to choose.
Yeah. And so it's obviously Find the ADHD Girls. So tell me a little bit about the organisation.
So Find the ADHD Girls is a project launched around a year ago underneath the Inattentive ADHD Coalition, and founded by the amazing Cynthia Hammer, who I literally was, I'm barely lost for words. But during the interview that I did with her a few weeks ago, I was lost for words, and I didn't really have anything to say because the woman is phenomenal. But the mission of Find the ADHD Girls is simple but urgent. So help girls with ADHD get identified and supported before the age of 8. And a lot of girls do get overlooked because their struggles don't match the stereotypes drive me insane. So instead of us being physically hyperactive and disruptive, They're quietly daydreaming, emotionally sensitive, or constantly trying to be good while falling behind in school or in friendships. And it's just really important to kind of recognize why um, getting girls diagnosed or screened or starting the process before they get to a certain age, which is 8 years old for ADHD girls. The significance of that is, self-esteem, self-worth. We're raising a generation of strong, independent ADHD girls, and that is really important kind of to me as a late diagnosed ADHD woman. I am going to put the link to the website for Find the ADHD Girls. But on the website, you can sign up for monthly newsletters. There's lots of resources that you can download and use if you want to do the pre-screening before you see the doctor. There's lots of stuff that you can use. There's a book that you can download, letter written by women, letters to my younger self. Yeah, there's lots of information on there, and I will obviously link all of that in. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really good. Yeah, especially the letters to my younger self. I imagine that can be quite healing. Um, have you done one to younger Emma?
I have actually. I'm happy to read it out. I don't mind reading it out actually. It's been quite cathartic for me to write it.
Mm.
Hold on, I've just got to find it. Uh-huh. So sadly, or not sadly, my childhood was horrific at times. And I don't use words like horrific lightly. I generally won't, because I think they're over sensationalized, particularly on social media platforms. But my childhood was horrendous. So I never slept as a baby. My mum used to tell me, "You're always on the go." So I never sat still really, and no one else would look after me. And I know she carried a lot of shame around that. But my brother was born when I just after I turned 8, and the minute that he was in the world, I was just pushed to one side. My mum took 3 overdoses. The first one was when I was 8 years old, not long after my brother was born, and for all 3, it was me that found her. We were locked in our bedrooms, we were neglected, and from all of my life, I've always been told by my mum, by people I've been around, and by people that I've worked around as well, that I'm thick, and actually I'm not thick. I just had undiagnosed ADHD and complex PTSD. And I think it's really important for me to just highlight that before I read my letter out, because there's a few things in here that obviously I hadn't already told you. So here is my letter to the girl in the locked room. I see you. I see you at 8 years old, with ears pressed to the door, listening for a mother who didn't know how to be one. I see you carrying the weight of her life while yours was being ignored. I see you wondering why you can't just focus, or why the world feels so loud and confusing. And I want to tell you 3 things. It was never your fault. Not the overdoses, not the bullying at school, not the bullying at work, and not the way that your brain works. You weren't, or you aren't broken. You were a Ferrari engine being locked in a cage, or a lion being locked in a cage. Um, all those people that told you that you were lazy, or too much, or too oversensitive, or too in your face, or too anything, they were wrong. They were looking at a survivor and calling it a failure. One day you will be 43 and the lights will come on. You will get clean. You will get sober. You will go to university and get first grades in psychology, because you are brilliant. You are not deficit. You are different. Hang on, little one. We are going to find all of the other girls just like you. To the girl currently hiding in the back of the classroom and the woman currently drowning in the shoulds of a world not built for her. You are not a broken version of normal. You are a first-class version of yourself.
Wow.
Mm.
That's, yeah. I don't think there are words, but that is really powerful.
Thank you.
Um, how do I follow that? Like,
Uh, uh, uh,
I just can't. I just can't. Um, I was going to ask you because, you referenced school a couple of times, and obviously now, you are an academic, you are at university, you're doing very well at university. So I wanted to just link back to your school years. And aside from obviously having undiagnosed ADHD, a traumatic home life, what was school like for you?
it wasn't a nice place, to be honest. Um, I did a lot of daydreaming. I did a lot of staring out of the window. I think a lot of what they taught me back then was very boring, but it was like a tick box. And I think for my undiagnosed ADHD, the minute, well, even with the diagnosed ADHD, the minute that something is boring or repetitive or my brain just switches off. So I think back at school, I was judged a lot, not just by people like peers, but by staff, by everyone. Because unless it was something that I was really, really interested in, then I literally was like, I couldn't force myself to do it. I actually did quite well in school, considering.
Mm.
All of my school reports would always say, if you concentrated and tried harder, then you could achieve amazing things. And it's like I was trying my best, I suppose. But unfortunately, them experiences followed me into my later teenage years, into my 20s, into my 30s, and then my 40s. And it was only after I got diagnosed when I was 43, and then I started studying psychology as a distance learner. And then I think psychology is something that I've always been really interested in, but I never dreamed it would be possible for me to be able to do a degree because, the thick label from my mum, from people at school, from just all that negative conditioning, even people I used to work with, and the constant judgment because my way of doing things is very different to other people's. I'm very chaotic, I'm very last minute, I'm very just lots of things, and these are ways that I've always been. And I think I just carried that load like a rucksack of boulders on my back. And it's only since I started studying psychology that I feel like I've gone on a journey of self-discovery, but then I've also realized that, my when I'm really passionate or when I'm really excited about something, then it's like, it's done in like light speed, or if it's something I'm particularly interested in, which is obviously ADHD, then I'll talk about it and I'll do it all the time and stuff. And, obviously in regards to find the ADHD girls, the cut-off age really is 8. And I think it's really important for parents of young girls and young girls to be told that, just because they are different, just because their processes and their ways of doing things is different, that doesn't mean that they cannot achieve anything. Now, I can't even say the word now. My academic, my goodness, my grades at my university in my studies, I'm going to say it differently, are still a huge surprise to me because they're all above 70%, or most of them are above 70%. And every time I get the grade, I regularly say to Hannah, like, I can't believe it. It doesn't make sense to me. I can't understand why this keeps happening. And I think for other late diagnosed women, it's really important to just sit here and say, do you know what? You can be proud of your achievements.
Mm.
Like, I've gone from being told I was thick and believing I was thick to getting 70% plus in most of my modules. And that's the kind of stuff that young girls and other late diagnosed women really need to hear about. Um, so yeah, again, why I've chosen Find the ADHD Girls for my chosen nonprofit.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really valid. And I was just going to ask, why the age of 8? Why is that a particular milestone or of significance?
So for Find the ADHD Girls, they have specified that age 8 is a magic number. So in education, age 8, or year 3 and 4 in the UK, and third grade, I think, in America, because Find the ADHD Girls is a non-profit in the USA. So age 8 is usually when children move from learning to read to reading to learn. This is where many ADHD girls first start to drown because the executive function demands skyrocket. So executive functions, as we may or may not know, is the prefrontal cortex part of our brain and is how we manage our day-to-day planning and lives. So even as young as 8, the pressure for these poor little girls in the classroom is increasing. So research shows that by age 8, children or girls have a stable sense of their own competence. So if we find them before then, we can wire their brains for I learn differently instead of I am stupid, like my experiences. And then age 7 to 8 is often when ADHD girls start masking or mimicking peers to hide their struggles. So if we find them before the mask hardens, we save them from a lifetime of exhaustion and of trauma, I hope.
Yeah, that's very true, isn't it? I think, yeah, it's how then can the organization, how can we find, how can we find them?
Um, so there are several links that I will post in the description of this special episode. And I think I was honoured to interview Cynthia a few weeks ago. And like I already said, I was blown away. The woman is phenomenal. She's dedicated 33 years of her life to raising awareness around inattention ADHD. And during the interview, she told me that she has a team of late diagnosed women who are committed partners. So, um, a committed partner is a woman who will do one activity every 3 months to either raise money or raise awareness. And I'm really proud to tell you that since my interview with Cynthia, I'm now officially a committed partner of Find the ADHD Girls. Again, I will put the link to that. And this is my first activity as a committed partner of Find the ADHD Girls. And I'm hoping that we can get people to donate because it is a really worthy cause. And how can we get the messages out there? So just share, post, literally flood social media with as much information around this stuff as possible. And then we can hopefully find the parents of the girls and be able to break the trauma cycle. So yeah, hopefully this episode being part of the podcast then is the first step towards me trying to make a significant difference to the little girls that desperately need it.
Thank you. I'm just thinking of what other questions I have, but yeah, I guess one question that I wanted to ask was how have you coped? given what you've shared about your childhood, about being undiagnosed with ADHD, like how did you manage all of that? How did you cope?
I mean, I don't think I did for many years. Many years. Alcohol, drugs, drug addiction, yeah, in psychological terms, substance misuse disorders, although disordered, I don't really like that word. But yeah, I mean, addiction basically was my first of many coping strategies. Being bullied at school, being bullied at home, just not really feeling safe anywhere. The minute that I was introduced to any kind of substance that took me out of myself, I ran with it, and I didn't stop for many years. A lot of I'm laughing. I'm not laughing because addiction is funny, because addiction is not funny. But a lot of the drugs that I wanted to take and took them on a daily basis were stimulants, and ADHD medication is a stimulant. I used drugs. It was the 90s, and I'm not gonna glorify the 90s and the rave scene, but it was the 90s and it was the rave scene, and I took the biggest advantage of that, and consumed as much as I could every day. It didn't take long for a substance misuse for me, drugs and alcohol, to be a daily thing. And when I was diagnosed by the psychiatrist with ADHD, she asked me what type of drugs I used to use. And I told her that it was stimulants. And she said to me, I'm not saying that you don't have an addictive nature, but the likelihood is that you were hiding or dulling down the trauma, and B, you had undiagnosed ADHD. And obviously an ADHD brain is starved of dopamine, and even addictive behaviors can boost the dopamine in the dopamine starved brain of an ADHD person. But yeah, I think I just buried my head in the sand and just basically started taking drugs like every day. And I'd like to tell, I got clean in 2007 and I've been sober since 2019. And whilst, that's incredible, my mental health after I got clean got much, much worse. And then eventually I was diagnosed with the ADHD, then the complex PTSD. And then I kind of started making a lot more sense to myself. Um, and I've kind of been on a crazy journey of self-discovery for the last few years. But I just wanted to highlight that for women, particularly late diagnosed women, substance misuse can be more prevalent. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are definitely going to, get an addictive anything to any substance or behavior, but we are more prone to it because of the trauma and because of the late diagnosis. And again, for the Find the ADHD girls, it's really important to highlight that the 8-year-old little girls, we're enabling them to be better mothers. We're enabling them to to not use substances to manage their lives. We're breaking that trauma cycle, hopefully. And by catching them at that age, then they won't hopefully need to kind of use substances to, manage their day-to-day lives and stuff. So yeah, addiction is it's in a conversation for another day, but I do think it's important for us to kind of highlight it in regards to this special episode. So yeah, it's like safeguarding for 8-year-olds, isn't it?
Well, again, thank you for sharing that with your listeners. And yeah, I think it's having these difficult conversations that are just very much needed, just to highlight how essential it is to avoid certain trajectories, which is also common that I see in literature surrounding particular ADHD, but other forms of neurodivergence as well. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Emma, for sharing today and the amazing work that you do. Yeah, well done.
So, and for late diagnosed women as well, for years, you have probably been told that your intensity is too much and your struggles are not enough. You've been judged by those who only saw your symptoms but never your strength. But let my story be your evidence. The judgment you carry belongs to the people who failed to find you. It does not belong to you. Your ADHD is not a character flaw. It is a brilliant Ferrari engine brain that has been stuck in a survival mode cage. Once you open that door to the cage, once you find the manual to understand yourself, and once you learn how to use your ADHD to your advantage, that's when the empowering process really, really, really does start. You will find that you don't just cope, you conquer. You and I, for the late diagnosed women, can be a cycle breaker, a truth teller, and a truth seeker. And it is never ever too late to be the woman you were always meant to be before the world tried to quiet you. The mask is off. The first class life starts now. Who is with me? Thank you.
I know I am. I'm here.
Absolutely. And thank you, Hannah, for your time. I know your time is precious, and I know you're fully supportive of me and everything that I do. And I just wanted to show a bit of appreciation because I know you've taken time out to help me with this recording today. So thank you very much.
It's been an absolute pleasure to be part of this with you. So thank you. Thank you.